Evening and welcome to the Research Triangle PowerShell User Group. My name is Phil Bossman, and we're happy to have you join us tonight. I will start off with welcoming my co-host here.
Hey, Phil.
How you doing?
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
What's one of the things that you've been working on lately at work? Have you any recent challenges? Working with presenting data to end users, presenting data to customers, and that kind of thing. Do you like dashboards, things like that? Do you do that?
What a great question, Phil. Thank you for asking. So, no, seriously, my team we've built an entire team basically around automation and front ends. And so the tool that we're using for that is PowerShell Universal.
So you guys had a business need, said, hey, you were an automation team and you needed a user interface in which to present that content to users. And the way in which you've done that is through an actual dashboard, web interface. Because some people are building GUIs, but you know what? The best GUI is the browser that everybody has already installed.
Yeah, well, let me just take a step back. Automation team, let's not go too crazy with that. We're automation admins, with sysadmins who wear automation hats now. No, but yes, we're an automation team. And we started last year with WebGear, and we quickly outgrew that. And I've been a fan of PowerShell Universal for a long time. And so we moved over to PowerShell Universal. And honestly, that tool has just really given us so many opportunities for cool things to do in the company. Well, so it's been, we do a lot of automation, but anything that needs a front end for end users, we run through PowerShell Universal, and people love the product. It really has been a big success for us.
Well, I'm so glad you said that because, in fact, we have somebody in the works here who can give us an insight onto what that product is. And Adam, do you want to join us?
Sure thing.
Hey,
I'm here to talk about this.
He's here to talk.
Topic.
Oh my God, is that Adam Driscoll, the creator of PowerShell?
I heard you guys talking about PowerShell Universal, so that's why I joined.
He just shows up.
How does that work?
I don't know. It's kind of like the bat signal.
Imagine if he turned on his camera too. Amazing.
It would work.
Oh yeah, you want that?
Yeah.
All right.
He is a real person, ladies and gentlemen.
I am. The voice in the night thing. If you say the word Universal, he just shows up at night.
I think Adam was just like, getting ready to have some dinner, and he, went off. Hey, somebody said something. And he magically
I ran upstairs and pushed my wife out of the way. I'm like,
no children were hurt.
People need me.
Hey, Adam, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so all joking aside, I use PowerShell Universal at work. My team has developed quite a bit of code that runs on top of that. One of my colleagues is here with us tonight. She's a developer on the platform, and we've done some really cool stuff. But the tool gives us, a slick interface that we've never had access to without having to write a lot of front end. So this is, if people aren't familiar with it, you'll get to see the tool in a little bit. Adam's going to show off what's new with the product. But there was a conversation that was going on prior to us kicking off record on this meeting where one of the guys was saying, we write code, but it's very hard to get people who aren't in IT to go to a command line to run code. And I agree with that statement a lot. And so PowerShell Universal makes it very easy for people to want to interact with automation because it looks like what they know. It's modern web pages. It's responsive frameworks. It's, beautiful. You can build beautiful pages. It's not just like a crappy interface. So it makes it really easy for us to do automation for end users. So Adam, thanks, man. I don't know if I'd have a job without your product. Thank you.
Cool. Well, glad to hear it.
So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Yeah, so let's see what's new in 5.0.
Yeah, we've got a lot of big stuff that kind of came through in 5.0. It's actually been about a 6-month project where we've really redone a lot of the kind of administrative user interface, so the admin console. We actually moved from a React library to Blazor. So we're using Microsoft's Blazor technology now, which allowed us to move a lot faster. We've added a whole bunch of things to the admin console, and we've also kind of been able to add some additional features, kind of outside of just interfaces in terms of like APIs. We have agents now, and we've added a kind of end user portal to make it a little bit easier to actually create those interfaces without having to write any code whatsoever. So trying to make it as easy as possible to take your scripts and like make it so that anyone else could access them without having to run that command line tool. So
So let's level set a little bit for people who are watching at home. So today is August 21st, and through some awesome luck, version 5 of PowerShell Universal went GA yesterday. So by the time you're watching this on YouTube at home, it'll probably be towards the end of August. But if you're curious, Adam's going to be showing off some of the new features in PowerShell Universal version 5, which was just released GA, and as he was saying, has been working on it for about 6 months. And so many of the features that you mentioned there, Adam, my team is already on. We're doing APIs, so obviously we have a lot of dashboards. And so some of the cool things that I like about Universal that a lot of people may not realize is it's not just a single node. So we have 2 nodes clustered. We set up a backend database. You can run it in the cloud. You can have OAuth. You can have sync sign. There's a lot of technology that you can enable in that. And so people show up to our dashboard. It knows who they are through single sign-on. We have lots of scripts that we run behind the scenes to cache data. And then so when people do queries, they're pulling it from a database. So group lookups that normally would take 20, 30 seconds to pull back group members across, lots of groups, all like lightning quick and stuff. So there's a lot you can do with that tool. As he mentioned, APIs. The other thing that my team's going to look to do is execute Python code through that console.
It does, Python, other languages?
You can execute Python. I don't know too much about it, honestly, but we are going down the Python path as another language to support. And so the idea of being able to execute some Python code with PowerShell is a pretty cool idea.
Well, certainly it is certainly enterprise grade, but it is also a product that is, available and consumable by small shops and in the community edition. There's a community edition as well, right? And so most of those features that we talked about, that he just talked about are available in the community edition. Some of them certainly come in the licensed version, but you could do pretty much 99% of all the features, right? In the community edition. To get yourself up and running is, there's a very short bar, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, let's say this. So I'll be happy to turn it over to Adam here, and I think he could represent his product better than we can. But it is a very low bar to entry to get a license for PowerShell Universal. And if you cannot acquire a license, goddamn, that community version, you can do, like you said, nearly 95% of the feature set. And so
certainly affordable. So I didn't want to say that either.
Certainly affordable.
But some people like, hey, there's a license. I need to like.
But
it is.
Adam is definitely very generous with his feature set. So
it is worth every penny.
Yeah. It's definitely it may take a little time for people to get up to speed on the layout and how to display pages, but it's time well worth it. So enough. Right. Maybe we should turn it over to Adam and let him talk about his own product instead of us sitting here blowing smoke. But
cool, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us tonight, man, and we'd love to see what's new.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I would share my screen if you would allow me to do so.
Oh, who did that? Bad job by the host. Make a presenter. Okay.
All right, I should be able to now. Let's see if I can. I am just going to I have a very large screen and I'm actually going to make it a little smaller. All right. All right, how's that looking?
I think that looks okay. Let's ask the people at home. You guys want it a little bigger than that, or is that good?
Yeah.
I ask you A or B, and you say yes. Which zoom it a little bigger, please.
So bigger in terms of display or zoomed in?
I think that just the fonts could be a little bigger. Okay, maybe just zoom one size up. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, perfect.
Right,
perfect.
Cool. Awesome. So, thanks for the introduction, guys. I really appreciate that. I appreciate all the kind words. It means a lot to me. So what I'm going to be talking about today is our product PowerShell Universal. like those guys said, there's a lot you can do for free. We do have a licensed version that, if you are using this in an enterprise environment, you'll get support and some additional features and that kind of thing. But a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is in the free version. And I would definitely say go ahead and download and play with it, because you don't even really need to get a trial key or anything like that. A lot of this is just available. So I'm just going to kind of step through the basic kind of pillars of PowerShell Universal, and then we'll jump into a demo of the new stuff that's available in PowerShell Universal 5. So this is actually a new feature, is the Universal Portal, which I'll be talking about a little bit. All the resources that I'm going to get into in a second, you can surface now on the portal, which makes it a little bit easier for end users to access this kind of stuff without having to build their own UIs. But the three main feature groups that we have in PowerShell Universal are, first, Universal Automation. This is kind of just your standard script execution and scheduling. So what's cool about PowerShell Universal is it's really built around PowerShell. So you can run scripts, you can choose Windows PowerShell and PowerShell 7 and that kind of thing. But it also integrates with a lot of the PowerShell features like read host and parameters and parameter sets and dynamic parameters and that kind of thing. So you have this user interface that's generated based on your PowerShell scripts, and you don't actually have to author anything to generate that user interface. Aside from that, you also can do things like, scheduling. And as Mike mentioned, you can have multiple PowerShell Universal instances that hook up to the same database, and you can kind of scale out your scheduled tasks and look at them all in one place. And it also does things like not only provide text-based output, but also pipeline output. So you can actually retrieve objects that are returned from your PowerShell scripts and use them in other features inside PowerShell Universal or external PowerShell scripts. I would say this is where PowerShell Universal started, was as Universal Dashboard, and that's what we refer to now as Universal Apps. We started out as a dashboard. It was mostly just charting and tables and stuff like that, and then quickly evolved into a full-fledged web application development framework, and that's kind of why we wanted to change the name and the nomenclature, because it's more than just dashboards. It's actually, you're building a web app with PowerShell. So we have somewhere around 70 controls that you can use that have their own commandlets. They generate their own interactive controls. So you can do things like forms and tables and charts and multiple pages, all kinds of theming and that kind of thing. And you're just writing PowerShell script. So as someone mentioned earlier, there is definitely a learning curve to this, because you are learning a whole framework for building interfaces. There are some web concepts that kind of trickle into the app development experience, but you can call PowerShell scripts, call these commandlets to generate interfaces, and it's kind of what get people started inside PowerShell Universal, because it does provide that kind of avenue for a PowerShell developer to generate a really cool web interface that is responsive and it integrates with their existing tooling. And then the other big kind of pillar is our web API kind of endpoints. So we kind of have two different endpoints now. We have RESTful HTTP endpoints. That's kind of a way for you to call PowerShell scripts from non-PowerShell platforms. My favorite example of this is that we had a customer that heavy PowerShell user. They were a trucking company, and they had PowerShell scripts that they wanted to call over HTTP because they had embedded systems running on their trucks that couldn't run PowerShell. So they would run a curl command. It would call back to the home base and update their location information and that kind of thing. So that's kind of where this really shines, is that you can access PowerShell from non-PowerShell environments pretty easily over HTTP. I'm going to talk a little bit about our WebSockets APIs during this demo, because we've done some improvements to that in PowerShell v5 or PowerShell Universal v5. We kind of refer to them as event hubs, and it's a way to send things from PowerShell Universal out to clients. So rather than calling back to the PowerShell Universal server, it's actually a way to kind of fan out to clients, kind of like WinRM and remoting do, just over a WebSocket connection though. And then some general platform concepts of PowerShell Universal is that it's cross-platform, just like PowerShell. You can run it on Windows, Linux, and Mac. You can run it in Azure or AWS. You can even run it on a Raspberry Pi, which I've definitely set up before. And then we have different ways of hosting it, like Windows Service or IIS, that kind of thing. We also have a cross-cutting security model that goes across PowerShell Universal. By default, we have like local administrator or local accounts that you can store in the database with an encrypted password and assign roles and that kind of thing. But in enterprise environments, you can also start layering on things like OpenID Connect for Entra ID or Azure ID, whatever you still call it, or SAML2 for whatever system you may be authenticating against, and then use roles and claims provided by those systems to grant access to resources inside PowerShell Universal. And this is another kind of focus that we had in PowerShell Universal v5, where we've enhanced some of the features of our security model in terms of authorization mostly. And we also have a bunch of built-in development tools. So we have a VS Code extension that you can use to connect to your PowerShell Universal instances, a PowerShell module to manage your Universal instances remotely or locally. There's debugging tools actually built into PowerShell Universal, so you can actually use debugging tools in your scripts from the server. And we have like an editor that is actually the VS Code editor, but hosted inside PowerShell Universal, that provides things like IntelliSense and PS Script Analyzer support. And there's just like a bunch of like other things that the platform kind of integrates with. Obviously, we have PowerShell 7 and Windows PowerShell support. It integrates, pretty tightly with PowerShell modules. You can define variables similar to like GitHub Actions and that kind of thing that you can use across your scripts and apps and APIs. We integrate with Microsoft's secret management module. So by default, we have a couple secret vaults that are included, but you can actually import other secret vaults like Azure Key Vault, and PowerShell Universal will automatically pick it up because it just uses Microsoft secret management tools. We have Git integration to kind of store our code-based configuration system up into a Git repository, so you can actually version control it and kind of go through the Git flow to take things from development through production. You can use pull requests and everything like that, and PowerShell Universal will reconfigure itself based on those configuration files. And then we have added some new database support in version 5, which is PostgreSQL. So we support SQLite out of the box, and then enterprise version supports SQL and PostgreSQL. So you have kind of some options there about how you're going to store your data inside the database. The configuration files are still stored on disk, but then we use the database for kind of history and certain permissions things and stuff like that that won't make it into your actual configuration database. And then I always like to mention the community. We have a very active forum with people asking questions, multiple times a day, and lots of people helping each other out, which is awesome. We have a public issue tracker that people are more than willing to provide feedback on bugs and feature requests and that kind of thing. So definitely check that out. And I'll be talking a little bit about the script library today because that is actually new. So before I jump into like the V5 features, I would pause for any questions. I will take that as a no. All right. So,
hey, Adam, we got one question.
Yep.
Adam, would your web sockets, web request perhaps be an alternative or replacement for Selenium?
Not really.
In terms of a browser automation alternative?
No, it's less of a browser automation and more of being able to run like PowerShell commands remotely. Like you wouldn't necessarily, it wouldn't necessarily be like connecting to a web page. It's more, I'll show an example of it. You can think of it more of like a WinRM replacement than like a Selenium replacement, I would say. So, all right. So I will get into a quick rundown of the new features and we'll just go into some demos. So kind of the major feature for this release is that we went from a React admin console to Microsoft's Blazor technology for our admin console. If you're an existing PowerShell Universal user, you might not notice as much because we're actually using the same design library and stuff like that. So the look and feel is very similar, but like I mentioned earlier, like it has provided the ability for us to move way quicker and ensure better quality of the UI and stuff like that, just through the tightly integrated Microsoft ecosystem has really provided a lot of tooling for us to like build out tests and like use our same code base to build the UI as well as the back end and that kind of thing. So been really happy with it, and yeah, it is really provided a great development experience for us. So in the admin console, we've also added a bunch of new features. So not only did we kind of replace the existing admin console, we actually added a bunch of stuff. Those include things like multi-language support. We actually don't have translations yet, but we're kind of querying our customers to see what's the most important. We're looking at French, German, and Dutch are our biggest customers. It seems like French definitely, and there are some like restrictions in Canada and stuff like that that require French translation. So that's where we're kind of going to go first. We've added improved job filtering and API test lab. This is a screenshot of the new homepage, which we'll see in a sec. PowerShell-based widgets is going to be a big one. I have a big demo on that. In addition to the admin console, we've also added an end user portal. So this provides a way to surface these resources that you have, like scripts and apps and API documentation and that kind of thing, to your end users without having to develop your own app just for that or provide them access to the admin console. The feedback we got was the admin console is too confusing for end users. They need like a simpler experience, and you don't always want to build an app for everything you do. If you could just build a simple web form just based on your parameter set and give that to your users, that might be good enough for a lot of use cases. In addition to the portal, we have also added, I would say, a pseudo visual editor to portals. You can create portal pages that are not really a script or an app or anything like that. A portal page is just a combination of widgets. If you've ever used anything like, now it's like slipping my mind, but the idea is that effectively you have these widgets. That's not a control as minimal as like a button or a table. It's more like a widget is something that provides information for a specific task. So for example, in this screenshot, you can see that I have things like local users, user groups, or local groups. And you would add that to your page. It would show the local user table without you having to configure that table. So the idea being then you create a page, add widgets to it, and you don't actually have to do any coding. And this will get a little bit into our script library, which is something that we're working towards. This is actually integrated directly with PowerShell Universal. It's just a GitHub repository that's at Ironman Software /scripts. And these are all PowerShell modules that add functionality to PowerShell Universal, one of them being widgets. So the idea being you can just install the latest version of the library, add a button or click a button to save that module and add some functionality to PowerShell Universal without having to implement that yourself. So that's where, for example, these local user widgets are coming from. So the script library serves two purposes, one being that it's great for examples. Second is that it's got pre-built solutions for it. And so, we're hoping that as the platform grows around this new functionality, that will also grow to provide users a way to get up and running without having to like write everything themselves. That's kind of what I mentioned here. I'll show you a little bit about how this is integrated into PowerShell Universal and how you can add stuff to the platform without having to like write any code. I mentioned this a little bit earlier that we have done a big kind of refactor of how authorization works in PowerShell Universal. So this is actually based on how Azure does their permissions, and the idea being that everything is going to go through this fine-grained permission system. We have our built-in roles. Those built-in roles are given permissions by default, but you can create new roles that have these fine-grained permissions. And additionally, we've added a bunch of new roles that already have permissions defined. So previously, we had like 5 basic roles that had like an arbitrary, set of things they could do. And then we had like this other permission system. And now we've just kind of put them all together, and you use this fine-grained permission system to either use the built-in roles if possible, or generate new roles that may give certain access to certain features inside PowerShell Universal. And this is cross-cutting across the entire platform. All these permissions and roles are effective against the APIs, the commandlets, the admin console, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it gives you a lot more control than you had before, than with the access controls and role-based access. I mentioned this a little bit with the question about agents and WebSockets. So we used to have this thing called the Event Hub client, which is obviously not very descriptive, but we've renamed that to the PowerShell Universal Agent. And you can install the agent service on anywhere that PowerShell Universal supports, and you can connect that to PowerShell Universal and run scripts against that agent. So it's not quite the same as running a script on a PowerShell Universal instance, which I will show an example of in a little bit. It's more like you can run a command against there, and either just fan it out across a bunch of connected agents, or hit a particular agent, return some information back from it, and that kind of thing. So we are looking at extending the PowerShell Universal agent to do other things, to make it easier to kind of fan out in your environment without having to install PowerShell Universal everywhere. So yeah, this is a lot more lightweight than standing up a new instance of PowerShell Universal. A couple other little things we've added, which I guess this isn't little for depending on how you configured your PowerShell Universal instance previously. We've dropped LightDB, which was a single file database. It just didn't scale very well. We were running into a lot of problems, and we've picked up SQLite, which we actually had support for in version 4. It's just now the default. We've added a tool that you can convert and everything like that, and we've also added support for PostgreSQL. I think finally, we have added persistent caching. We did have a lot of users asking for ways to store data in the database, and this is kind of what this achieves. Set PSU cache now has a persist switch parameter on it, so you can actually cache things in the database. And what's cool about that is, if you're in a multi-node scenario, it caches across all those nodes. So if you do get PSU cache and retrieve that data from the cache that is in the database, that means you only need to cache it on one node, and use it across all the nodes inside your environment. It also means that it survives restarts, which can be important for certain environments. There are a whole bunch of other things we've done: script documentation. We've added some new components and features to apps, publish folder uploads, inline script debugger, and that kind of thing. So one thing I would like to mention is that if you are in version 4, we have very little breaking changes in the app framework. So we actually had a customer that upgraded from 4 to 5 in their dev environment just to check it out, because they had 100 pages under one of their apps, which I have never heard of someone having that big of an app, and it worked. So I was like, wow, that's awesome. So we have it's been a pretty successful so far in terms of V5 app compatibility with V4. So, all right. So now let's move on to the demo. So I will actually pause one sec for questions.
Hey, Adam, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, so I am a customer and I use the tool a lot, but I've always been curious, like, do you have like a wide range of the people that are using your product, like the scale of the environments they're in, or is there a typical user or things like that? Like what's a typical PowerShell Universal customer look like? What are they doing, and what does their install base look like, and things like that?
Yeah, I would say a typical PowerShell Universal user is somewhere between 1 and 2 like instances of PowerShell Universal, where they'll have a dev instance and a production instance, and then sometimes a second production instance. I would say that's typical. We do have some larger customers. I have one customer that that I talk to quite frequently, because he has something like 40 instances of PowerShell Universal across 8 domains that, like, a lot of them don't even have network access to each other and stuff like that. So We do have very complicated environments, but I would say the vast majority are like 2 to 3. So that's where we're at.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. So I have all these notes. They were supposed to be on the side of my screen, but you guys are going to have to see them, I think. All right. Oh, yeah. Okay. We're going to look through. I'm going to start off with the portal, and we're going to work through some scripts. I'll talk a little bit about kind of the new features in the portal. We went out with it marked as preview for right now because I think that I don't know. It's novel enough that we'd like to like get user feedback before we really commit to building another UI framework sort of thing. So we kind of jumped the gun on version 4, and we added that drag and drop designer. It just didn't work well. You know, there were always feature requests, and it never really solved the problem that people were after. So that's why we're going out with this in preview, get feedback during 5.0, and see if people like it, and then hopefully we'll just pull it out of preview in 5.1 and keep revving on it and making it awesome. So this is the kind of the new homepage. You can see that we have a lot more information density. We're kind of going for less of what we had before. We're just a bunch of cards with like one tidbit of information, and now it's like charts and stuff like that, just to provide a little more information. You'll notice that failed is green. I noticed that earlier today. Not great, but this is the first version, 5.0, and we're going to be kind of tweaking some of this stuff as we go out with the next minor versions. So if you're inside PowerShell Universal, now you're going to notice this new portal node here. And if you click View Portal, it's actually going to pop you over to the PowerShell Universal portal. So I'm an administrator user, and I've assigned all these resources to myself via the admin console. It would be the same experience if you assigned it to some other role or something like that. And as you can see, you can assign multiple different types of resources. So scripts, this is a portal page, an app. You can also assign API documentation if you want to allow your users to see certain API docs and that kind of thing. And unlike the admin console, it's very simple. So like if I were to click this find locked files, you'll notice that I just get this super simple find locked files form with a single entry that is required. It's some information about it. And you can see there's like lots of help and like that kind of thing. And I'm going to show you how you actually do that. So let's actually run this once. If I want to look for Notepad. This is actually running find open files, which is just a PowerShell commandlet to look for open files. And you can see it just returns a table of all the open files by Notepad on my machine. So you can see it's like locked a bunch of DLLs and stuff like that it's using to run. So if we actually go to the admin console and we look at kind of what that looks like from like a developer perspective, you can see it's just a PowerShell script. So that whole form was just generated with this. There was no like new UD like text box and all that kind of stuff. It's just setting up a PowerShell script with enough information that the form can generate based on that. So we got a parameter, it's mandatory. Here's a help message for it, the name of it, and then this is the actual execution of it. And if we actually go look at this job, you'll see this was what I just ran right here. So just like running a job inside PowerShell Universal, running it in the portal will do the same thing. So you have a whole audit history about what that user did, where they ran it, what environment it ran on, what machine it ran on. And like I said, you can see like things like logs and pipeline output from that job. Additionally, we've added documentation to scripts. So it's just a markdown file, mostly just so the portal can have like additional information. You can put any markdown in here, so you could have lists and links and images and all that kind of stuff. It'll just render that markdown for you. So if you do have a bunch of like documentation that you'd like to include on that portal, this is what is going to render that there. So that is also new in this version.
Hey, Adam, got a quick question.
Yep.
So in this example where you're doing the find lock files, which, and I'm assuming in this example you're searching against the local instance.
Correct. Yep.
Would this be an example of something that you could do in the future with the agent, where you could search across the agents?
Yes, you could. Yeah.
So I could have a script and I could have like 3 remote agents and I could be searching across those agents with some sort of parallelization or something like that. That's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yep. Yeah. That's kind of where we're headed. And we'll see. I'll show you an example of kind of how the agents are right now, talk a little bit about the limitations, but I would love to get to the point where you could take this and just run it on an agent, right? And then, yeah, like you said, run it in parallel, get the result back when you can. And yeah, so.
Interesting.
All right. I'm just going to take a peek at this, what I was going to do next. All right. So now, yeah, so that's kind of like the script experience in the portal. So honestly, we kind of had this experience inside the admin console. Like if you click here, you kind of have that experience. Like you still get that like, the form field and everything like that. But you can tell that there's just a lot going on here. And for certain people, this might just be too overwhelming. So that's why the portal was developed. In addition to scripts, you can also put apps on here. So this is it's just going to link to, I don't know why that happened. It's just going to link to an app. And I'll show you a little bit about this app in a bit, but you can see this is using the same V4 universal dashboard kind of app. So displaying a table and an alert and stuff like that. And the portal is mostly a hyperlink to that. And if you look in the apps page here, you can see this app is actually assigned to my administrator role, and that's why it shows up in the portal. All right, now I'm going to talk a little bit about pages and widgets. So we have a portal page. The concept here is that a portal page is a collection of widgets that you display for the end user. Widgets are those like very specific kind of user interface things that you can add, like tools that you can add to portal pages. So if I actually look at this page, you'll see that I have this local accounts widget on here. This local accounts widget was added just kind of this visual designer. Like it's very simple. You can kind of just organize things in rows and columns, and you can add these widgets to the portal page, and then they show up like this. So it's like out of the box solution that you add to the portal page. And then the widgets themselves, these actually came from the local account widgets module, which is actually part of the library. So I didn't have to develop these myself. I just went to the PowerShell Universal library over here. I installed this local accounts widget, which what it kind of boils down to in PowerShell speak is that it's just a module. So you can see that it just installed this module that implemented that table that I can add to my page. So the idea being that this widget or library will grow, and from there you'll be able to add all kinds of widgets. So like we already have some like system widgets, networking widgets, local account widgets, PowerShell information widgets, and in the future, I envision things like Azure widgets and, Teams widgets and stuff like that you could just add to a portal page and not have to do much with. They do support things like properties, so you could like set properties on the widgets to kind of adjust their behavior and that kind of thing. But in the end, it kind of creates this portal page that hopefully is simple to use or create without having to write a lot of code. That said, if you are inclined, you can create widgets yourself. So this is where I'm always a little like tentative, like creating a new UI framework. But the idea here is that it uses the same underlying technology as the admin console, so we don't have to actually develop a whole other thing, kind of like we did with apps. So I just have some examples here. You can see I have this big blank canvas. This is the widget editor that we have, and I'm just going to grab some of this code so I don't have to type it all. And you just click this little code button up here. You have two tabs. You have the Razor tab and the PowerShell tab. The Razor tab, this Razor syntax is what we call PS Razor or Blazor, because it's similar to Blazor, but it's not exact. So Being preview, we don't have like extremely, I would say, detailed documentation on this. This is actually one of the examples that we have there, and we have the script library that has a bunch of other examples if you're looking for how to do this. But so you define kind of the layout like you would in like WPF or something like that. And by doing this, it just creates the controls for you. You can see I have, a form with a text box and a submit button. Right now, it does nothing when I submit. But what we can do is you can actually take this other chunk of code, and kind of the idea being is that the Razor XML syntax is for defining how it looks, and the PowerShell is how it behaves. So this is how you would set up a form. I'm creating a class that kind of defines the different fields in my form, and then I have this submit function that will receive that model back when I type things in. So as you can imagine, like we'll probably end up simplifying some of this and that kind of thing, but this is very tightly aligned with how Blazor and the library we're using work, so that we didn't have to kind of reinvent the wheel. But now I have this submit button, and you can see I get that little notification. So what that's doing is every time I click that button, it's calling my function, it's reading out what's in that text box, and it's just using one of the services that we've provided, which is the message box service, which is what's popping up that little toast at the top. There's other services like JavaScript services, so you can run JavaScript, and navigation services, so you can navigate places, and you can use whatever commandlets you want in here. So you could run scripts, you could invoke APIs, you could even call things like graph APIs and stuff like that directly inside here. But kind of the idea being here is hopefully these can get like packaged up into little widgets that you can share with the community, and then for the vast majority of people, they can just kind of reuse existing widgets without having to redevelop everything from scratch over and over again, which is what we see with a lot of users with PowerShell Universal. And after you define a widget like that, you'll notice that when you go to your portal page and you click edit, it actually shows up here. So you'd be able to add that widget to your portal page and move it around and change properties of it and stuff like that. Yeah. All right. So, all right. Now we're going to talk a little bit about, well, I'll stop for questions, I guess.
So I was just thinking, Adam, that, I'm listening to what you're talking about, and obviously this demo is like what's new in Universal 5. And I hear you talking and you're like, it's new, we're going to refine this is going to get better. And that may give people a little bit of the wrong impression. Version 4 has been out for a very long time and is very robust. I just want people to understand that you're looking at the first release of the version 5 product, and Adam's just being very candid and saying, we're looking to develop and make this a little better. That's not sort of the way the product works. The product is a very robust, stable platform, and you don't need to be on version 5 now if you don't want to be on latest, greatest. Version 4 is still supported. It's been around for a long time. Version 4 is running in my environment, and it's not like this, hey, we're trying new things kind of stuff. It's just that this is the latest and greatest, and so he's essentially saying it just came out yesterday, and we're still thinking about some design decisions. So just keep that in mind when you look at the product.
And I would say it's less about version 5 being considerations being version 5. It's mostly just the portal feature. So I would say the rest of the product is definitely production ready. It is this portal feature that we have released in preview that we are still refining and getting user feedback from. So that is what I would say. It's just the portal feature that those comments I was making I'm referring to. So especially with the widget and page design stuff. So,
and I would also say, for community members that are watching this, that's kind of a plus. You don't get a lot of products where you can influence the design of the product, right? So Adam's taking feedback and saying hey guys, tell me what actually works, and we'll look to build that as a better model based on what your use cases are. So, you buy a lot of products, you use them, and you're like, oh man, I wish it did this. You put in a request, nothing ever happens. This is a product where the developers are listening, to what we are telling them and trying to make improvements to make it work even better. So I find that a plus.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. All right. Now I want to talk a little bit about some improvements that we've made to Event Hubs, which we have, like I said, renamed the Event Hub client to the PowerShell agent. And this is kind of the first step towards like more functionality in that agent. So I have created 2 different event hubs, and what you can think of an event hub is kind of like multiple agents will connect to this named hub, and then from there we can send events and effectively send events to all those at once, sort of thing. It is possible to send events to individual clients, which I'll show in an example, but yeah, this is a way to kind of fan out really quickly with these event hubs, similar to how WinRM can do. And this is just going over a WebSocket connection rather than what WinRM is doing with HTTP. And I am just going to show an example of kind of how this works. So I actually have 2 Event Hub clients running. So I have, delete this because I'm going to recreate it. This PowerShell Universal agent, which this is just an MSI you can run on your Windows machines. It's going to install this service. From there, you have to do a little bit of configuration to connect it up to PowerShell Universal. You can make these connections authenticated by using an app token, but I'm just using unauthenticated connections just as an example. And then effectively, when you go to connections here, what you're going to see is that we actually have this Windows machine here connected. And that machine can now receive events from PowerShell Universal rather than, typically it's a one-way communication with PowerShell Universal to like send an HTTP request or something like that. Now we can send things out to all these nodes. Additionally, I have a Linux instance here, which this is new in PowerShell Universal 5. We're actually distributing the agent for Linux and Mac OS. So this is running on a Ubuntu box. I'm just running it in the terminal instead of a service or anything like that. But you can see it's connected back up to my server on the Linux hub. So I actually am going to grab a little script from here, and I'll show you how to actually run something against these hubs. So in PowerShell Universal version 4, we had send PSU event. We've added an alias for invoke PSU command because it kind of lines up a little bit better with like the nomenclature in PowerShell being invoke command. We have invoke PSU command. You can specify a hub that you want to run against. In this syntax, it's going to run against all clients connected to that hub. And then you can just specify a command in the parameters that you want to run. So this is going to call out file. We're going to specify a file path of test.txt and then an input object of hello world. So it's going to create a file and put hello world into it. So now if I run that, you can see it succeeds. We don't get any output because it's just running. And now if we come back to our Windows Server here, you'll see that it wrote the file up to my desktop and put hello world in it. So that could have been any command, obviously, but in this case, I just did out file there. And then what's cool about this is it's cross-platform. So if I come back here and I actually change this to point to the Linux hub, change that path to be a Linux path, obviously, but do the same thing, run the script. We get a success. And if we go back to our Linux client here, if we look at my desktop, I have a text file with hello world in it. So it was able to kind of fan it out to different groups of computers based on who's connected to which hub. Additionally, if you do want to call an individual endpoint, at the moment it's a little tricky. We have some stuff in the pipeline to make this a little bit easier, but the idea is that you can actually look up the current PSU event hub connections, and from there you can filter things like, are they connected, which event hub is it, and then for each one of the connections, if you specify a connection ID, what it's actually going to do is going to return data back from that service, and I'm going to call get computer info in this case against all my Windows event hubs or event hub connections. So if I run that, it's running, and as you can see now, it sends back that information from that Windows server. So somewhere in here, you'd see that it said it was a server, but yeah, it's like my Win G4U server virtual machine that is actually running that event hub. So we now support. Yeah, go ahead.
The question then is like the event hubs. The hubs themselves are the targets themselves. I started getting confused as to where some of that nomenclature comes, where the hubs themselves are the collecting points, and then people or targets jump in there. I just got confused there backwards. So
yeah, right. And I would say that this is because we're kind of like working around our previous kind of architecture. So the clients themselves connect up to the hubs, and then the PowerShell Universal service sends events through the hubs, but it can send events to specific clients that are connected to those hubs. So in 5.1, what we're going to be doing is you're going to go like this. Instead of all this like stuff, you could just send, you don't even need to include the hub. You'll be able to go like invoke computer name, and then it'll invoke on that computer rather than all this other like, I got to worry about which hub I'm connected to and which connection ID sort of thing. So this is our first step towards that. And this is similar to what you'd see with like WinRM, right? Where you'd specify a computer name or a list of computer names, and then you can invoke commands against them. So I think there'll be less worry about this kind of thing. And I think the other place that we're going to consider surfacing this is inside PowerShell Universal, you actually have a list of computers. This is where you would see all those connected computers. So I think that would be a little more straightforward than what I'm kind of talking about right now, if that makes sense.
Did I miss the whole process of injecting computers or ingesting computers?
This is PowerShell Universal instances right now, but I think in our next version, you'll see agents in here as well. So right now, it's just PowerShell Universal instances, but what I'm saying is next version, we're going to add agents in here too. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so what's my next thing? Oh yeah, talk a little bit about permissions. So our new permissions model, hopefully you don't have to deal with it too much, and it just kind of works because we've added a lot more roles. I think we're going to continue to add some more roles that are for other things inside the platform, but right now we've added things like for the general feature sets like API editor reader, app editor reader, script editor, and reader, and portal editor and reader. And if you actually look at any of these, we have this little permissions drawer now. You have a bug that it is not working in light mode, and you can see that those are the permission identifiers for that role. So if I were to actually select something like an operator, you're going to see that this guy has access to lots of things, but like not settings or security, but he can do APIs, apps, automation, and portal. So permissions are cross-cutting across all the roles, and now the built-in roles just use those permissions. You can also create roles and assign permissions, and you can also assign roles to individual identities. So if you wanted to, for example, give Joe Schmo access to event hubs, you could do so in here. And for example, or to log out, I actually have a API user here now. If I were to log in as that API user, you can see like my admin console changes a lot. We've got a little fine tuning to do with the home page, but I don't have any of the other things inside here. I only have access to endpoints, documentation, and event hubs. No scripts or settings or apps or anything like that. So if you have a very specific user, this is how you would assign permissions. And you can see that the admin console adapts a lot better than it did in version 4. All right. Let's see. I'm going to go. All right. Caching. We'll look at next. So, like I said, we added persistent caching, which is actually distributed persistent caching. I actually have a cache commandlet here. And the only thing that is different here is I've added this persist that did not exist in v4. And if I run that, it's going to run. It's going to cache all my notepad processes in processes. From there, you can click platform cache, and you'll see that we have this processes cached item. It was created earlier this afternoon. It's been updated just now, and it was last read at 6:18. And the reason you do this is typically for very slow retrieval and that kind of thing. You could schedule that script to do the caching, and then it could do it for all machines inside your environment. And then if you were to actually go to your app, I have an app that actually uses this. I'm just calling get PSU cache just like I would in version 4. You don't have to say like get it from the database or anything like that. And it's just going to return that data from the cache rather than calling get process again. And that's where this is coming from. So this is just loading directly from the cache. No need to like call that again. Like if you had something that ran for 30 seconds, that'd be a really bad user experience because it would take a while for this page to load. But now it's just instant. Yeah. And then one little improvement that we've made in the app world is that what we found with apps is that like this code can like.
Can I ask?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Adam, so the whole invoke from the cache and all that kind of stuff. Will it refresh the cache if it's empty, or or it just assumes that it's there and it'll return nothing? You have to pre-cache it. I guess that's where I'm like, you need to know that the cache is there, or there's kind of some.
Yeah, currently you have to know the cache is there. So for example, like if this called get PSU cache and there wasn't anything there, you'd have to know. You could like obviously get the data. If it wasn't there, invoke the script and then get the cache, but it's definitely something we could look at improving,
All right, I'm just trying to understand, like, if I kind of design to this, I need to make sure that at least what I'm trying to cache is definitely in there, or like some other process to make sure what the data is there. Right. Or at least, in that form. At least that's an initial onboarding of that process, of that data.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
So before you jump in, so there was another question earlier about some of the guys who curious about the agents, and they heard you mention that there's a few limitations, and I don't know if anybody understood what those limitations were. So do you have like an idea of what the limitations of what the agents are now, or I know you're already in your head on 5.1, so you probably fixed a lot of those things, but
yeah.
I think people are trying to wrap their head around the agents part a little bit, what you can and can't do.
Right. I would say this is the biggest limitation right now is that we don't treat them as like first-class citizens in terms of like a machine that you execute code on. It's more like I want to find this little connection here and go execute code. I have to like dig through to find like what computer I want to run it on. When you think about agents, you think about like, GitHub agent, I just want to go run on that machine. Like there shouldn't be this whole like trying to determine that. So that I think there's like a usability limitation there. It's possible to like doing what I just did to kind of do this, but that's one. I would say the other limitation is, especially with something like GitHub or Azure DevOps agents, they'll like download the whole code repository before they run scripts. So there's no way right now to provide these agents with like the modules they might need or the scripts they might need. So these things need to exist on that machine. So if I call get computer info and it doesn't exist on that machine, there's no way for me to provide it to that machine without running some other commands first. So I would say that's another big limitation that you don't run into with other kind of like CI/CD agents, So I guess it's a similar limitation though with like WinRM. WinRM would have the same limitation. It's just running what's on that machine. So
it sounds like very similar in use case. Like it sounds like a convenient way to just have a path to a remote point. And the assumption is that the remote, you can work on with the remote point with whatever that remote endpoint has. You can't pass a bunch of stuff through it. It's just a vehicle to get to the remote endpoint at this point. And maybe I'm simplifying a little bit, but
no, that is exactly it. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I think we have one more question. Someone was asking, like, what happens to the cache on the reboot of a PowerShell Universal instance?
If you put it in the database, it will persist. So that was the problem with the previous cache. It was all in memory. So this will persist reboots.
Okay, cool.
All right. I honestly don't have a lot for apps. Like I said, we didn't make any like major changes to the app framework. We've just been like slowly adding components and parameters as people ask for them. We actually have the same live docs application. This is actually all generated from our comment-based help. And you can come in here and see all the different components that we use with examples, and you can actually play with these to see how they work and that kind of thing. So that just works like it did in V4. Your app should work in V4. We've added some like nice to have kind of things. And one of those is that we've added a functions tab here. The problem that we always see with apps is that like this single file gets really, really, really big. And we try to, provide the ability to create pages. So you kind of break that down into separate pages and that kind of thing. But still, like if you want to define functions and that kind of thing, you'd have to like set up a module somewhere else. But now we've just put it all in one place. You have this like functions tab. You can define a function that like wraps up a whole bunch of logic. In this case, I'm just like creating an alert, and I'm using the built-in new UD alert, but I've like wrapped it in this function that I can then call throughout my app. So there's no need to like have an external module or anything like that. And this just shows up here. So that's where this is coming from. So I'm calling that custom function, which in turn is calling some logic to generate that. So typically what we'll see is like people with really complicated tables or data grids or something like that. And then this page will be nested like 70 columns deep. It's like really hard to find where to put a curly brace. So just trying to help out with that. So, all right, couple more things. All right. I want to show the API tester. So this is just kind of a development, nice to have. In the API environment here, you can now, when you click edit code, this used to be in two different columns. Left-hand side was like your editor, right-hand side was like a little tester tool. Well, we've like taken that tester tool to like another level. We kind of looked at things like Postman and added a whole bunch of new features to the tester. So you can, obviously you have the URL. You can set up things like authentication, so you can test like what happens when I send an unauthenticated request. What if I'm certain roles? You can pass in a body, you can pass in headers, query string, and then it will generate a invoke REST method for you based on what you put in there. And if I were to, for example, some stuff in here, this endpoint just echoes out the headers. So if we look at the code, you can see this is what I would call to actually invoke this from a PowerShell prompt, but I can also call this invoke here, and it's just going to return, values from that web request. So I just echoed out the headers, and that's where my test header came out down here. So you can see a bunch of other headers, but that was the one that I added manually via this here. So just a nice to have, like all in one place, that kind of thing. I feel like there was something else that I wanted to talk about, but now I don't know. Yeah, because the one thing I am mentioning is that we have added the ability to just create scripts without having to, oh, I know, now that I'm here. I'll show two things, and then I'll open up for questions and kind of get out of everyone's hair. But we added the ability to add scripts from commands. So right in PowerShell version 4, or PowerShell Universal version 4, you can define a script and stuff like that. But now we've added this create script from command button. And what that does is it lets you just select a module and then select a command in a module. And then it's just going to generate a script in here. So you don't like have to actually like write any code. And then when you click this, it's actually going to give you all the parameters of that commandlet in here. You could even assign these to like the portal or whatever like that, and have users just have access to that kind of stuff. And now I can just run get scheduled task without having to like define an actual script to do that. And it's going to return all the scheduled tasks on my environment. And we actually looked in the file system. There is no like get scheduled task script. And if you look in scripts.ps1, you're just going to see that we just added 2 parameters on here, module and command, which actually it does exist in version 4, but there was no UI for it. So, and I'm not totally sure if it works really well. So yeah, that's a nice to have too. And then one last thing I want to show, just because it's kind of cool, is this is kind of internal, but we've like changed how like some of this script execution works. I won't really get into that, but when you open up PowerShell Universal v5, you'll see integrated PowerShell 7 and Windows PowerShell 5.1, and that's how you run your scripts. But we also have this Discover Scripts or Discover Environments button. So if you click that, what it's going to do is it's going to go out and it's going to discover what's on your local machine. You can see it found 744, found my preview version, and it also found Python. So we now discover Python and create an environment in a way that you can actually run Python scripts directly without having to like author a PowerShell script that then runs a Python script. So if you actually go into my scripts here, you can see I have cool.py. We actually have syntax highlighting for Python scripts in here now. And if I were to edit this script and change the execution environment to Python, click OK, and run this script, it's going to go and run the Python script. So it didn't actually run a PowerShell script. It just ran that Python script directly with the Python version that's running on my environment. So we're trying to like take a step a little in that direction just because as mentioned earlier, people are also using Python in their automation environments. This is currently only supported for scripts. It doesn't work with APIs and apps, but now you can run Python in your PowerShell Universal pretty easily. So, but yeah, on that note, I will open it to questions, and that's kind of the end of my demo, unless you guys want to see anything else.
All right, lots of cool stuff there. So while we're waiting to see if anybody have questions, there was a comment that came in the chat like 25 minutes ago, and I kind of relate to this. So like if you're not a PowerShell Universal user and you watch this, you're like, man, there is a lot of stuff here. It's a little bit intimidating, and so we were wondering, and we can do this after the demo, after the recording if you want, but would you be able to give someone who's brand new to PowerShell Universal, like, hey, how you create a simple dashboard and how you would write a script, like the basic 1 or 2 steps that maybe would get them started with how to use the product? But I think they've started so much stuff, they're just like, I don't even know where to start.
Right, I know, and that's kind of like it's hard with a demo like this where it's like, what's new in PowerShell Universal? Right, you've never seen it before, right? And yeah, I can kind of step through like some simple like, what if we like create an API? We'll create an app or a script, and then we'll create an app, which are like the 3, I would say, basic things. Like I went over a bunch of stuff that was like most people probably won't use, but
well, let me stop you there for a second.
Okay.
A couple of things that people don't know, well, you didn't mention was like you can install this product with 1 command, right? I mean, it's and it has its own web server built in. So if you want to spin it up and play for yourself, I think it's port 5000 on your local machine, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
But essentially, it's like install PSU server.
Yeah, and then PSU server. Yep.
Yeah, and then you're done, and you have PowerShell Universal running on your machine, and then you can go to a web page and you have a dashboard, and then you can start to play. So, like, just even installing the product, it's a public module on the PowerShell gallery, right? To get started,
right.
Yeah. So I mean, it's that simple. It's just install module, and then you can install the server on your machine, and then you're up and running. Like literally, what I just said there might be 4 minutes. Like you could literally have an install running in under 5 minutes without any knowledge.
Right. It would be just these 2 commands: install module universal, install PSU server. It's going to be running on port 5000.
Yeah, I can't believe I remembered that. I did that a year ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I am a big Docker fan too. So if you ever use Docker, I would say we have a Docker image that you can just Docker pull, Docker run, and then you have like a sandbox to play in. So
Yeah, so installing the product is that simple. And then maybe you could take it from there, Adam, like maybe you get started with the first widget or your first dashboard or first.
I would say, yeah, I think dashboards are always the most interesting for people just because it's like a visual thing. So you enter PowerShell Universal, you're not going to have this app. It's just going to be blank. You would create a new app. You would say like app 1. There's going to be a URL for this app. So I can just do app 1. Now we have an app. When you go in here, there's not going to be anything. It's just a new app. If we actually go, oh no, what have I done? This is why you don't use dev builds. Just going to do a quick restart. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, if you notice, I'm running 5.1, which is probably what I shouldn't have been using for a demo. All right.
I think the value here is to know that, hey, it just broke. All right, this is what it takes to turn it right back on. So it's
yeah, right.
going too.
We're just going to do a restart of this. All right, let's see if we're further along here. All right, okay. So now we have our app. As you can see, the content of the app is just hello world, and that's why when the app shows up, it has hello world in it. But we have, like I said, like 70 something commandlets. And if we do something like button, we'll do like text, click me, and then we have event handlers. So if you look for something like on click, what we can do is do something when that button is clicked. So I'm actually going to show a toast. Now when I save that, it's going to automatically refresh this page because I changed the content of that app. And now when I click it, you'll see the toast popped up in the right-hand corner. So it's very much that you can kind of play around with it. And I would highly encourage that you look at this, this docs page here. Whoops, that was what I was trying to do. Because this has a bunch of useful examples. So you can actually come into this docs page. And if you were like, okay, how do I display a chart? You can take this code here and click this little copy button, come right over to your app, paste that in here, save it, and now you have a chart. So then from there, you can obviously go ahead and like tweak things in the chart and like change different properties and that kind of stuff. So that is how I would kind of get started. If you need some like ideas of what to do, there's this, I just always link to this. There's this like real world examples thread on our forums where people have submitted some of the coolest stuff I've ever seen people build with screenshots and code snippets and that kind of thing to like kind of give you some inspiration of what you could do with PowerShell Universal. And they've taken it further than I've ever anticipated. So definitely have a look at this if you're like looking for like what are people actually using this for. Those are customers replying directly to the forums with their screenshots from their jobs.
Adam, I have this page bookmarked, and I say to my team, I'm like, oh, look at this. We need to do that.
Yeah.
Look, this is what I want it to look like.
Yeah, like this is crazy. Like I don't even know how he did that.
I love.
Yeah. So yeah, it's all possible. So that is, I would say that is the one thing is like it is all possible because you can do all kinds of things with it, which is also kind of what makes it like a little difficult to get up and running, right? Because it's like, I could do anything. How do I do it? So that is why the live docs are awesome because you can kind of put them in there. The other place that I would point people to if you're getting up and running is this scripts repository. Not only do we have those widgets, but we also have apps. So if you go in here, you're going to find some examples of like creating a user in Active Directory. So this creates a form that adds a couple controls, and then when it's submitted, it actually goes out and calls new 80. Well, this is group. Create a group inside Active Directory. So definitely check that out too. So, one other thing I would recommend is we are going to do a refresh on this soon, but I've made like a bunch of YouTube videos. If you go to this training page here, about a lot of this stuff. So like if you want to get the basics of, apps, I've made some videos on that, that kind of thing. So yeah.
All right. Well, I think maybe
That was awesome.
we'll wrap it up. That was a really
I'm
cool book.
always floored with that, all that it can do. It's been a great product.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
so,
you.
So this is this product runs in our environment, and we have quite a bit of heavy usage on the product, and it's really allowed our team to do lots of cool stuff. When we end this video, we're gonna probably shove some of that internally to some people here, but want to thank Adam for coming and spending all the time with us and showing us what's new in the product. Thank you, Adam, for that. It's been really awesome. And we're gonna give one last plug. If you are watching this video at home and you are in the local Raleigh area, you can come and meet Adam this October. He'll be here for PowerShell Saturday, October 5th and October 6th. You can get information at PowerShellSaturdayNC.com. Adam is going to be there talking about PowerShell Universal along with 15 other speakers on various topics. So we're looking forward to that. But Adam, I want to say thank you so much for sharing some time with us tonight. Yeah. Any closing thoughts, you have?
No.
All right. So
Always blown away by the product.
yeah, I mean, an amazing product. I hope people take the opportunity to download it, install it, kick the tires. It's really amazing some of the stuff you can do with it.
Yep.
So with that, let's wrap it up there. We're going to say thank you to everyone who came and joined us tonight. We'll see you next time. And don't forget to check out the YouTube channel. We have over 150 videos on all things PowerShell related. So check us out and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.